Hey everyone, welcome to the Coffee Talk, the React Universe on-air podcast. This is a Coffee Talk episode. On the Coffee Talk episode, we drink coffee and we talk about some new things in React Universe. Today, I'm joined by Szymon Chmal. How are you, Szymon?
Hello, everyone. I'm fine. It's a little bit early for me, but we all know how it is. Sometimes we have to basically do what we must.
Also, it's not appropriate to drink coffee on the late hour. So, like, if it's 15 to 9 a.m., it's a great time for coffee, right?
It's better for our health, for sure. You know, it said we shouldn't drink coffee 6 hours before sleep time. So, it's the best possible time.
Yeah, and it's the best possible time to discuss the newest Next.js because it was just released. But first, let me introduce Ola as well. Hello, Ola. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing good. Yes, it is pretty early in the morning, but it's good. There's good energy. So let's do it.
Guys, first question. Two questions from me. Do you have your coffee and did you watch the Next.js conf?
Yes, no and no, but I also have another question. I have a question for Szymon at first, because Szymon, you went to React Advanced in London not too long ago, and I'm super curious. You have your coffee and the cup, so that's great. I'm very curious about your impressions from the conference.
It was interesting to be here because I didn't know what to expect, basically. I wasn't sure it will be a big conference in some kind of, big venue, or maybe something more smaller, more focused on local community, and it was the latter. It was smaller, but still informative. It still was great to be here, to talk with people. There were many, let's say, popular developers in our community, like creators of React Query or rather maintainers of React Query, Astro, Zustand, which is not pronounced Zustand, but it's a German word.
How is it pronounced?
Zustand, simply. Yeah, exactly. We had a discussion about that. The weather was great. I mean, maybe not on Friday when... Yeah, exactly. I was expecting rain, and rain there was, but, well, in the end of the day. But the day before was really, really, really sunny. It was so hot, I could basically go around in my t-shirt and, sightsee for some time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds nice.
And Callstack was also here. We had Oscar, we had Apple Vision with us, so people were able to try it out. And we were able to basically say that Vision is supported by React Native, thanks to the work of Oskar Kwaśniewski. So,
that's a great achievement. That's like a really good step towards like write once, use everywhere, or whatever the motto is. So, yeah, that's really awesome, the work that he's doing. Okay, I'm ready to jump back into Next 15. Łukasz.
You can start. Go ahead.
I don't want to.
You're doing great.
No. I didn't watch the video. I went through the blog post. So a lot of stuff was interesting to me in the blog post, but I know we have very different opinions, because for me, it looks like a big upgrade, but we talked before this podcast with Łukasz, and he said he feels differently. How do you feel, Łukasz?
So I feel like, and I watched the keynote, and Guillermo in the keynote basically said, we are the biggest JavaScript framework, which is like uncontested, I think. Like, that's not a controversial opinion. Like, Next.js is the biggest framework in JavaScript world, in React world. And with framework of that size and with that history, you cannot have very big announcements every year. So I think, like, we had some big announcements from Next.js like 2 years ago with Turbopack and like Next 13. I think that one was packed with new things. This one, like Next 15, is just, in my personal opinion, it's just a bunch of maintenance stuff. Like, we have React 19 in Next 15, and this is big-ish. But apart from that, like, okay, yeah, like there are a bunch of breaking changes, but more in a way of improving developer experience, more in a way of future-proofing for performance, and less in a way of here is a big new shiny thing that everyone will go crazy about, basically. This is my opinion.
Okay, but let's circle back to React 19 because I know Szymon has some opinions about using React 19 and Next 15.
Yeah.
So many numbers. I'm surprised I didn't mix them up.
Yeah, so basically, my opinion may be a little bit controversial because the problem is that Next 15 supports React 19, but in Rails candidate version. So it's not technically a stable one. It's Rails candidate, which is pretty near to be stable, to be called stable, but still it's not there. So basically, we should be pretty fine to use it in production, but bugs may be found there in the code. Still, it's not considered stable. And Next.js has been doing it for 4 versions. I remember back then that React Canary was used instead of stable channel. But yeah, it's a wrong thing, but people seem to not care and everything seemed to be working just fine. Maybe in some little, some kind of special use cases is not working well because it's not stable, but for the general audience, it's looking great. So maybe that's it.
I've heard different. I've heard that there are many libraries that do not support React 19. So probably for people with big projects that have a lot of dependencies, probably they will just stay on React on Next 14 for a while until all of the library maintainers can upgrade to React 19. But I think it's not a question of good or bad if Next.js is pushing React 19. It's just the way our community work, basically. Like, you should not use React without a framework. So if React 19 was in, I think, beta on release candidate for half a year now, and even before that, we had different Canary versions of React 19. Like, it has to go through some community engagement, through some framework in order to get this feedback. Because if Next.js is not pushing the boundaries on React, like no one else will, like we will not get that crowd of people using React 19. So like, I feel like this is just a normal step for Next.js.
I don't agree with so many things that you just said. I'm like trying to decide what to disagree with first. You said that you shouldn't, like, people don't use React without a framework. I think it is like comfortable to use Next, but you can totally use React without a framework. You can like just write your website with React, and when you go through the documentation, you write your example, to-do app, whatever, with React. So I think people on the documentation.
Yeah, like on the documentation, they dropped support for Create React App like 2 years ago or something.
Okay, but do they recommend like that you jump to a framework?
Yes.
Directly?
Yep.
Really? Oh my God,
You should not be using React without a framework. Like you can, it's the same as in React Native, right? Like you can use bare bones React or bare bones React Native, but basically then you build your own framework. You have to build your own routing. You have to support all of the configurations and stuff like that. So you either go with Next, you either go with Remix, you either go with like a bunch of different frameworks, smaller frameworks, but you should not be using React on its own.
Okay. So that's something for me to like fix in my brain. The next thing I didn't want to agree with you on is that you won't get like
tear me to shreds.
No. That you won't get enough community feedback if you don't have big companies pushing this stuff, because I feel that Next is a big company and they're using this a bleeding edge React 19, it's appealing to small developers. Maybe if somebody is like wondering, should I use Next because I would like to use new features. So if I use Next, I can use new features and this is going to be fun. But if you work for some big company that somebody has some, huge e-commerce web store and they have Next, they're not going to jump to the upgrade. We talked with our colleagues at Callstack and we have some clients that use Next, and they said that the clients that have big e-commerce websites with Next are not early adopters.
But that's, again, that's a truism for all of software development. You don't update your biggest applications first. You don't update to newest React or React Native 1 week after it was announced. You wait for some smaller developers to find some bugs. You wait for .1 or .2 version, and then you upgrade. Like I said, in the example with the third-party libraries like components libraries or something, they don't support React 19 yet. So if you have a bunch of dependencies, some of them will not work. You will have to spend time making them work with React 19. So another point is that Next.js 15 actually allows you to use React 18 if you use Pages router. So the older router that they have, you can use React 18. But for app router, you will be using React 19 basically. And like Szymon said, they've been doing that for years now. Server components are not considered stable yet because React 19 is not stable yet, and this is the version that has server components, but you can use server components inside Next.js for, I don't want to say years, but you can use them for at least 1 year. You could use server components. So there needs to be this big pool of developers using the thing in order to give feedback on, because without it, we wouldn't get those kind of things.
Okay, you convinced me. So this is a magical moment for the internet. Somebody had two people had different opinions, and one of the people convinced the other person. Wow,
yeah,
big day.
But still, I would prefer to see Next 15 RC or something like that, just to mark the thing. It's using something that's not proven stable at this point.
So it will be more obvious for the users.
Exactly. Because now we are finding some, maybe not experimental, but still not fully ready to be named stable behind, something that's considered stable. So it may seem a little shady, but like we said, it's been like this for years now. So maybe that's good. Maybe that's why Next is basically the biggest framework in JavaScript ecosystem, because it's first to have React server components, first to have React 19, first to have next big thing. For example, React compiler.
I'm not sure how well this statement is researched, but I don't have a different opinion. But
that's for sure. There's the feeling in the community. I mean, it doesn't, the feeling in the community is not always based on facts.
Shall we move on to some other new things in...
Well, Szymon mentioned the compiler. Do we want to talk a second about the compiler?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so compiler is here. It can be used. It's still not stable. It's experimental support. And it works, technically. But the bad news is that it uses Babel instead of SWC. So it's not Rust baked. It's JavaScript baked, so it will be slower by something like 10 times or maybe even 12 times than SWC.
That's
so when you opt
in,
so when you opt in to React compiler, you must be prepared to have this long build times. That's the cost for now. They're working behind the curtain. Yeah.
Are you saying that on the roadmap they said that they will be using, that it will be faster at some point? Like they will rewrite it in some other tool or what?
Yeah, basically the plan is to provide a Rust compatible implementation of the compiler at some point. Currently, React team is only basically exposing JavaScript implementation of the compiler. But at some point, when compiler will be proven again stable and production ready, and 100% completed, they will have a Rust-based implementation of that, and we will get back to this SWC baked toolset or rather.
Can I be again on more optimistic side on this? Compare the speed of compiling your code and memoizing it to speed of 10 developers compiling your code and adding use memo and use callbacks and all of that.
And then you should add 10 more developers who leave comments in the PR saying you should memo all the things, get in there and fix it.
Yeah, and remember that React compiler isn't only adding use memo and use callbacks. It's also, let's say, caching part of your virtual DOM.
Yeah,
basically,
I read that.
Basically it's possible to statically say that some part of your component will never change, so the compiler will save it in the memory and reuse it. So no DOM modifications will be made.
I think what I read somewhere is that it changes the components into just DOM elements, right? Like you no longer have like to call all of the components tree. You just have this cached blob inside your HTML. I visualize it like this.
It's not 100% right, but the thing is that there is this playground for React compiler, and you can basically put your component here and you will see the exact output of the compiler. And there you will see that parts of your component are basically put into useRef reference. So in the next render, React will see that nothing has changed. The same reference is maintained, so it will not update anything because there's nothing to change.
Okay.
I
mean, I'm excited for the compiler because it seems to work magically, but in the React Native world, we're probably going to wait a few more years before we get anything close to that.
Well, you can use compiler in React Native as well.
You can.
Yeah.
Okay, but should you?
I don't see the downsides. Like even so, for some of our clients' projects, big enterprise projects on React Native, maybe like you have to spend some days to actually enable it and to prepare your code for it, and then probably many of the files will not want to compile because like maybe rules of hooks or rules of React are not followed. But then you get this like free boost of performance in all of the other parts of the project. And even if this is like maybe only 30% or 50% of your project, that's still many, many screens and many, many components.
And remember that you can basically change the default behavior of opt-out to opt-in. So you will basically mark the components you want to be compiled. So it's safer this way.
Good. So that's good. You can decide that I'm sure that this component should be compiled. And okay.
Exactly. So you can gradually adopt React compiler in the code base. It doesn't need to be, one big push of the compiler to whole code base, but rather just a general update for each component.
What you should definitely do, even if you are not adopting compiler yet, you should definitely turn on the linting for compiler so that you gradually prepare your project for compiler. For being
for the compiler.
I was going to say for being compatible with compiler.
Okay.
Shall we go back to Next.js 15?
Yeah, let's try.
I have something that I want to say about the developer experience improvements in this release. So I think a year ago, Next.js changed some caching mechanism, and basically it was very eagerly caching a lot of things. And people didn't like that because like they felt like they lose control over the caching logic, basically. And there's a bunch of things that Next.js cached.
Yeah,
so,
like cached aggressively.
Yeah. So they are backtracking on that. And like in the blog post about Next 15, you can see that they're basically, again, instead of being opt-in by default, the caching is opt-out by default, but you can still enable this. So like in the blog post, they're mentioning that they're backtracking this behavior. But also, and this is not in the blog post for React 15, for Next.js 15.
There you go. We got our numbers mixed up. Yay.
But it was mentioned during the keynote, and it is mentioned in the docs. There is this new directive called use cache, which you can put on top of your files, on top of your components, on top of your functions, I think. And
so it's like use server? Like
yeah, I was going to ask you about that actually. So first, let me explain what it is. It is directive for Next.js only directive that tells the Next.js compiler to cache this component or cache this function, cache this page. You can set a number on this. Like it's not a number. You can say how long it should be cached. And yeah, basically it works almost automatically, but it is adding a new directive, Next.js only directive to your code. So we've already had a bunch of directives like use client, use server in React. Then there is this use cache. In React Native world, we have use worklet, which is I think reanimated only directive.
Yeah,
you can use it if you have reanimated.
I've seen only reanimated so far.
So what do you guys think about that? About adding some weird strings on top of your files?
Szymon, go ahead.
First of all, it's not type safe, if I'm not mistaken. There's no way to make sure that you pass correct values. I mean, it's weird because with use cache, you need to call some other function in this function marked by use cache to, for example, say that I want this function to be, or rather the result of this function to be saved for 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, if you want to parameterize it, you have to use like a cache life
some kind
or
of
something.
function.
But then, if you just want to have the default behavior, I think you can just use cache.
Yeah, you can.
For the default behavior.
That's weird, at least for me, because I'm accustomed to high-order components, high-order functions. So usually what you do is you wrap your function with something like with cache and automatically cache the results and return it and probably observe time to live. But this time we have this indirection, let's say, when you put some kind of magic string and voila, it works.
Maybe magic string is better than just having this by default without a magic string.
That's better, but still, I'm not sure if it's the best idea to, directivize the code. Like we had decorators in the past. Well, we still have decorators, and now we have directives which seem to serve similar purpose. Sometimes when you put them in functions.
Like the decorators are just higher on their functions and they work on functions. Directives can work on whole files.
That's the only difference. Like you can apply directives to the whole file.
Yeah.
But technically you can store additional metadata on functions, for example, with decorators.
But it definitely does look like a magic string, which is weird, and I don't like it either. It seems like use client and use server was already weird enough, but I get it. You want this file, you want to make sure that this is, this executed on the server. Okay, but use cache seems from a different world than use client or use server. It's like it needs a different context. Because
it is from different world. Use cache is from Next.js and use server, use client is from React. And I will have a digression right now. There is a great talk from Robert Pasiński from Callstack, who is working on React core team, I think. He's working on... sorry, I forgot what he's working on.
He's working on very smart stuff in React core.
On some smart stuff, yeah, definitely. He's very smart. He has a talk about where is the standard of JavaScript coming from? So some of it is coming from JavaScript standards, from ECMAScript. Some of it is coming from the browsers. Some of it is coming from HTML. And now some of it is coming from directives from React and from Next.js, right? So if you look at the code, there is this like ladder of complexity, and the more complicated tools you use, you have more complicated abstractions like directives than like, and if you are searching for definitions of it, it's okay, so this directive is coming from Next.js and this directive is coming from Reanimated, for example. So basically it's
but it's a weird development in the language itself, since JavaScript in the last few years has become ubiquitous. I love this word. Like everybody seems to try to use it for all sorts of stuff. Let's say that if JavaScript started as a language for web browsers, now it's used for smart devices, for writing apps on TVs, and a lot of other crap. So
yeah, it was the first version. Just a note: the first version of JavaScript was created in a week.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. The deadline was a week, and I don't remember the name of a person responsible, but he managed to create JavaScript from scratch in 1 week.
I think it's Ike.
Brandon Ike, was it?
Yeah.
For Netscape, if I'm not mistaken. That was the name of the browser.
I'm so old, I remember using Netscape.
Yeah, but like you said, it's now basically used everywhere.
I remember writing code for Netscape. Sorry, I cut you off, Szymon. Go ahead.
No, nothing really important. Just, like you said, JavaScript is used now on web, on backend. We are powering Apple Vision with basically JavaScript because React Native. Fridges, TVs, cars, if I'm not mistaken, one of the car manufacturers is using React to power its UI of a car. So
nice.
JavaScript is also in the car. So it's kind
of
of
everywhere.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird to see those new directives popping out. Like, it's not ECMAScript, it's not JavaScript, it's just an idea of somebody working on React.
Just like timeouts. Going back to my digression from the presentation that I saw weeks ago, set timeout is not JavaScript, it's a browser API. So directives are not JavaScript, are the framework API. Let's go back to next.
I want to do a quick digression as well.
Okay.
You did one, I get one too. There was GitHub Universe a few days ago, or yesterday, I think, and in the keynote, the CEO was showing a graph of the languages that are used on GitHub, and number 1 is Python, number 2 is JavaScript, and number 3 is TypeScript. So that's so ridiculous that they put them separately, so they would put Python first and say that Python is the most popular. That
really? Do you think that's why they didn't?
Yeah, because the whole keynote was all about because Python is used for AI, and the whole keynote was all around AI. And circling back to Next 15, I have to give them some respect for not including any AI features in this update. Kudos for them.
Yeah.
Good job, Next. And let's get back into whatever interested us in this update.
Can I just take two out of the list? So I want to talk about the breaking requests API and code mode. So basically, there are a bunch of APIs that used to be synchronous and now are asynchronous. And so those are things like params and cookies. You can read them in the blog post. So in big projects, you will have a lot of files to change in order to use that. Actually, you don't have to do that.
But that's where code mode comes in, right?
Yeah, let me first get to why you don't have to, because for some time they say it will just work synchronously as well. But if you want to rewrite your code to use asynchronous methods right now, you can use code mode. So code mode basically will go over your file, all of the projects, all of your files, and change those for you. And probably some other things as well related to React 19 that also like requires some changes in the code. But yeah, that's a breaking change in Next 15. And that's all from me. That's all that I found interesting in the Next.js.
Okay.
Yeah. So other change is that we finally have something stable in Next 15. And that's Turbopack. Turbopack, but not Turbopack itself, but rather Turbopack the single function. So initially when I read the blog post around what's new in Next 15, I suspected that the Turbopack itself is now marked stable, but it's not true. Only the dev mode is considered stable now. So the thing you use to develop locally. Why it's important to use Turbopack? Because it's fast. Again, it's another thing that was magically improved by using Rust. In the past, we still have Webpack, written in JavaScript, which, because it's written in JavaScript, is limited to, for example, single core only. And yeah, it's usually slow when you cross some kind of boundary on the application size, on number of modules. And Turbopack is way more faster because of Rust, because of its architecture to support multiple threads and different other changes. So starting with Next 15, we are now able to use this Turbopack in order to build code locally and then apply incremental updates when we change stuff. So for example, when we have this big corporate application consisting of thousands of, or even, magnitudes bigger application, you can now make a simple change and don't wait 10 seconds to see on the screen, but rather a second or maybe a fraction of a second.
That sounds like huge. a big, huge developer experience.
Exactly, it's huge. It's not ready for production build. You shouldn't really use Turbopack for production builds because of a couple of lacking features, which we will not go into details right now because that's not a good place for that. There are too many of them. But yeah, developer experience should be now a way better, especially in those really, really large applications.
Have you, Szymon, personally tried Turbopack in in some projects that you work on?
Back in the day when it was introduced as experimental technology, and it was faster, a lot faster.
Cool.
10 times or even more faster. And I expect that with current state of Webpack, how long it takes sometimes to build applications in production mode, Turbopack may be a really useful tool in order to, first of all, have increment, or rather produce new versions faster and basically give new features to the users faster. But also it allows us to cut on costs. For example, we have to pay for CI CPU time. With Turbopack, it will be reduced significantly.
So it makes me think of the meme where you have two developers fighting with swords and somebody's asking to get back to work and they're saying our code is compiling, so now there'd be much less time for that.
I hate to lose that, actually.
Right. Damn it, they're taking away our free time.
The Turbopack thing goes to my point from the beginning of the episode when I said they announced a very new things 2 years ago, and Turbopack was announced, I think, 2 years ago. And then we are 2 years later and they're announcing that it's stable, which is not as shiny new thing as saying something is very new and you should try it.
That's a different strategy. That's a different, the Bond developers did that, right? They announced this big shiny thing and they started yelling, everybody go ahead and use it. And I don't know what happened then.
Yeah. Is there anything else that? So I joked previously about like not being that nothing else is interesting in the new Next.js. There are
It's
a bunch
okay,
of
Łukasz. You
things.
can have your opinions. It's fine.
I know. I mean, like there are a bunch of things that like I don't feel that we should go into very deeply.
Yeah, it's like you don't feel excited about. For me, I have one thing that I wanted to mention. It's secure server actions. I'm very much into InfoSec, and I feel that like 90% of the websites that we write, we forget about security. And server actions in Next are very insecure. So anybody who's using them, please like go into documentation and read how to secure your server actions, because you're practically just exposing HTTP endpoints directly into your server. So that's not great. And we have now in this Next 15 update, they're doing secure IDs, which make sure that whenever a server action from the client is trying to connect to the server, it uses like an unguessable ID. That's a very important update. So please, everybody get into that.
Yeah.
That was like my point here.
That was interest you in the Next.js. Okay.
Yeah. Because I feel like there are so many websites. Next is huge. There are so many websites using Next. So if there are a lot of websites using Next, there are a lot of people who are trying to break into Next websites for sure and try to get your data.
Yeah, definitely.
And your user data.
And Next is hiding some stuff behind the curtain. Like you said, you have some kind of server function, which is then imported to your client file, and it just works.
Yeah.
And people may forget it's HTTP in between of those.
Exactly. Okay. So
shall we wrap up?
I think, yeah. Go ahead.
Go to Next.js website, read the blog post for yourself, try out the new Next 15, watch the keynote. Definitely, it's a great demo on the keynote. Like I love the keynote. And yeah, let us know in the comments what you think about Next.js 15 and like React 19, if we should use React 19 or if we should stay on 18 forever.
I wonder how many opinions are going to be like that. Stay on 18 forever. Don't ever change.
Thank you guys for joining me for this morning coffee. And I hope to see you sometime soon talking about some other new technology.
Same. It was great talking with you guys.
Exactly. So I guess we will meet again for next...
for 16. Next 16.
Okay. I was about to say... say 20.
See you next time.
Next 16.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Do you want to help us out, make this podcast even better than it is right now? We send a survey after each episode asking for your feedback. In March 2025, we will pick some people that fill in the survey and award some awesome prizes to you. So do it now. Help us out.